All right, so today we are going to be examining a journal article called Feminist Writing Working with Women's Experience. And I wanted to get y'all to understand how exactly to approach a journal article and learning how to examine it and understand it and read it. So, here we have the title page. We can see the citation just here. It says source, and then it has the publication and everything. So typically there are citations on the title page, but they don't necessarily say if they're APA, MLA, or Chicago style, or what have you. So we are going to be learning how to do citations later on, but I just want y'all to know that typically there are citations, and once you get familiar with them, you will be able to identify which of those is going to be on the top of journal articles. So here we have the first page. Now, obviously we read the title, and typically on the title page, we're going to have an abstract, some keywords, and the keywords are going to be very important to get to know as well as we continue to look at journal articles throughout the year. And so we can see that this is from the Feminist Review, which means that it is a reviewing journal. And this is a secondary source. A primary source is going to be the book itself, versus this is a writing on the book with references to the book, meaning it is a secondary source written by somebody else about a book, about some other literature. So this is a scholarly publication, meaning that it is from a popular source. It is also from a professional and trade source, and sometimes they can include government documents, maybe theses or dissertations. So obviously this is a review, so this is more of like a popular source, and definitely more of an academic one, because JSTOR is a nonprofit journal company. So here we have Feminist Writing Working with Women's Experience. Now, this is written by Frida Haug, and we can see that from the first page, this is not very new, but also new in terms of literature, because a lot of things that are in the modern literary world do begin around the 1980s, 1990s, and then on into the 2000s. Now that we've hit 20 years into the new century, we can see that there are going to be a few new eras named throughout this time period. But for now, this is more of a modern take on the literary experience. So, for this article, it's discussing what elements consist of experience and theory. So when we are taking a look at a journal article, we really want to take a look at the titles of all the subheaders. So here we have experience and theory. A lot of the things that you really want to pay attention to are in bold, as we can see, and then the rest are kind of regular text. Again, beginning of the header, highlighted the whole thing, but you can see literature and experience, the family, a very important aspect of a woman's experience, especially in those time periods, which we are talking about Jane Austen here, as well as Marge Piercy. And it doesn't quite say when it was published. We can assume it was, of course, during a time when the family was the number one experience of a woman. Then we also have literature and theory. Literature and theory refers to the era with which this era of literature is identified with. So we can assume from what we are seeing here, it's more of a appropriations of the family, more of a clan, kin, familial community for women. Theory can consist of many different aspects. We're really not going to get too into that, as you know, we're not exactly studying to be literature majors here, but different theories in literature can consist of things, of course, with feminist aspects, with socialism, and romantic theory. There are all kinds of ways to interpret literature. So now we also have literature and experience, including the appropriation of body and abortion. So this is a very big topic back in the day as well as now. Then here we have another one, the girls who found out what it meant to be women. Very powerful. So again, you want to make sure that you're taking a look at the words that are in bold. Now, this one isn't organized the way that a typical, maybe psychological or sociology journal article might be organized, because again, this is with literature, so it's more of a literature review. It's basically what we're going to be learning how to write, obviously not in this lengthy order. But notes at the bottom will typically consist of footnotes or just additional indications of further ideas that they can't really put out in the professional looking pages. So, at the end, it's kind of the same thing as when you would write an analysis. You have your references that you use throughout the journal. And then at the bottom here, we can see that where the source exactly came from. It's not necessarily a citation, but it does include the DOI, when it was downloaded, what time. Not all journals can include that though. So, this is just a basic look at what this is. When we take a look at this in class, we're only going to be reading the very few sentences that are here that follow the words in bold. We don't really need to get into what these books are about in order to understand the entire journal article, just because we're trying to see what the influences at the baseline of the women's experience entails. So there are a lot of particular things here, like androcentrism in the centuries of Occidental theory. So Occidental theory is again one of those many, many ways of interpreting the literature. Okay, so this one's one of the more basic formats of taking a look at a literary review. We are going to be taking a look at more maybe psychological or sociology journal articles in the future, and that way you can kind of get a small taste of what that might entail. So this one's one of the more simple ones, and we're very lucky that it's quite short, because a lot of them are going to be quite long. But again, I'm not expecting all of you to read through every single page. So when we are doing our citations for a source of this nature, we are going to be doing an MLA style. And again, we'll be learning how to do that throughout this quarter.